All right, Krishna, everyone. This is the acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are taking a look at the ninth mantra of the Sri Upanishads. This is the 10th part of my series, and we started with the invocation mantra, and now we've worked our way all the way up to mantra 9. It's been a fun series so far. I recommend starting from the beginning if you are just tuning in and working your way through those. So I'm going to read aloud today's mantra as usual, and you can read along with me. This is another one of my favorites. This section actually is, probably, I don't know, I love all of them. Anyway, so remember, the Sri Upanishad is part of the Upanishad tradition, which is the tradition of ancient philosophical summary and commentary upon the Vedas. These are all thought to be divinely received and transmitted spiritual texts and spiritual knowledge. And then the Sri Upanishad in particular is called the Upanishad of the Lord. Isha means Lord. It was written in poetic verse. It consists of 18 verses. We've been reading through it methodically, and we're going to dive back in today with mantra 9. So let's read it together. Those who are engaged in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge. Let's read it once more. Those who are engaged in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge. This verse is really interesting because, first of all, it starts off by saying, those who are engaged in activities rooted in darkness or ignorance or in illusion shall descend into darker karmic experiences, let's say. This is, in a sense, therapeutic for the soul. This could be a way of helping the soul awaken. It's not just arbitrary, cruel punishment. It is specifically designed karmic scenarios to help the soul learn and grow. But learn and grow by understanding the choices that it's made to immerse itself in illusion, and illusion being not the being turned away from God, or not being in touch with the true nature of who we are and our connection to our source. So that's mantra 9. But then the second part of mantra 9 says, worse still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge. Whoa, what does that mean? It's not just, so there's a step below that potentially in terms of things you might want to be careful not to do while you're here, and one of them is getting engaged in a so-called culture of knowledge. All right, so let's hear what Srila Prabhupada had to say about that. He said, in the purport to this verse, modern civilization has advanced considerably in the matter of mass education, and yet the result is that people are more unhappy than before on account of too much stress on material advancement without any taste for the most important aspect of life, the spiritual aspect. So what this verse is actually referring to is people that are not only engaged in, let's say, just sort of selfish or maybe slobbish behaviors, drinking too much, consuming too much, just kind of, hedonistic activities, but actually there's something even slightly worse, which is people who go in search of knowledge or truth that is not rooted in God, because they want knowledge or truth that will make them powerful and help them to advance in the material world and be powerful in the material world. So in other words, people who seek out knowledge that will give them power, all of which being rooted in ignorance, actually turns out to be really destructive. So for example, if we think about the world right now and the way that people have used all different kinds of scientific knowledge that in its own right is sort of miraculous to learn about. It's miraculous that we can learn about the nature of reality and the universe and the handiwork of God. But when we look for knowledge specifically because we want to root it back into our selfishness and our sleeping state, then it's really problematic. Look at, for example, what's happening to our earth today, because we've used so-called culture of knowledge and scientific advancement in a way that has been utterly destructive. We're, polluting our planet, the oceans, the animals, each other, our bodies, our health. And so this kind of knowledge, this culture of knowledge, that kind of knowledge, the pursuit of that kind of truth or knowledge, is actually worse than people who are in pursuit of that. In some ways, are actually worse than people who are maybe just sitting on the couch slamming beers. You get what I mean? So that's the idea behind this verse, and I think it's really beautiful, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard people as an astrologer say, we're living in the modern world now, where we have so much more knowledge about, the solar system and the universe, and like, isn't that just an old, outdated thing? And I find it interesting that ancient astrology is so much more in touch with the truth, even though in some ways it's a very simple set. It works based on a simpler set of observations and a simpler understanding of the world around us. So at any rate, I'm not at all trying to say that science isn't an amazing thing. But what we're doing with it, why are we using it? How are we using it? That's the point of this verse that's really important. So let's go on to take a look at a few other ideas. In Bhakti, real knowledge flows from real love. And real love can only be rooted in the soul's relationship with God. So in Bhakti, we say that, when the soul is regularly turning its heart to God in love, through sadhana, through practice, through chanting, hearing sacred sound, reading the Shastras, singing, when we live a mindful lifestyle, we take care of our bodies, we eat right, etc. When we create an inner temple for God to, dwell in, that's the ultimate goal of life. And when we do that, then the idea is that it's only when we do that that real knowledge can flow into the heart and into the mind. And so real knowledge comes from real love. Without love, there is no real knowledge. Real knowledge is not just knowledge, it's also, you could say, wisdom. Real knowledge tells us not only what something is, but why it is and how we should exist in relation to it. So real knowledge is wisdom, and real knowledge is wisdom of right relationship, how to be in right relationship through love with anything and everything. We can only get that kind of knowledge, that kind of wisdom, that kind of guidance when we have put love at the center of our life first. Love also puts the other first. It puts others first, starting with God, and seeing everything else as an emanation of God, or as seeing God as the indwelling spirit, soul, and source of every single thing in existence. If we put our desire to serve and love God first, and love and serve others, then that's where we also start to come into the flow of real knowledge, real wisdom, real truth. So real love also means real service to others and putting others first, especially God. Service requires humility. It's hard to serve if we think to ourselves, I won't be happy if I put others first, or if I put God first, or I'm being degraded or diminished somehow if I do that. It takes the radical step of believing that serving others and loving others could become the most infinite source of our happiness, much more than anything we could do for ourselves. That love of God and love of others is the ultimate source of happiness. So service requires humility, because we have to put our own selfish motivations and desires down a notch. I certainly am nowhere close to that, right? So I'm preaching a gospel that, I'm not qualified to preach, right? But this is the goal, and this is the path, and this is the practice. And I'm always inspired by seeing fellow, yogis, let's say, on the path. Certainly I'm not one, but people on the path who are doing this and give me hope that I can improve at this. And they are out there, and they are real. We find those people, they inspire us, they help us to believe that I can love, I can put others first, my ego can be a servant, and that can give me real happiness. The service requires humility. The only real knowledge, therefore, comes from humility, service, and love. And any other pursuit of knowledge in this world, selfish intent, this particular verse, what does it say? Worse still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge, when the pursuit of knowledge is not existing with the desire to be humble servants of love. So really interesting verse. The Bhagavad Gita says something similar in the 13th chapter in the 3rd verse. O scion of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. I love that he adds that at the end. That's my opinion. If you want God's opinion, I'll give it to you. So the my opinion is that I'm the actual source of knowledge and knowing that exists in all beings. So if you want to be knowledgeable, know me, develop a relationship with me, serve me, love me, surrender to me, and you'll have all the knowledge in the world that will help you be blissful. And because when we know how to exist in relation to God, we know how to exist in relation to everything. Everything becomes the fountain of God's love. That's God's opinion. I love that at the end. Anyway, then the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the 11th canto, 19th chapter, 1st verse. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, a self-realized person who has cultivated scriptural knowledge up to the point of enlightenment and who is free from impersonal speculation, understanding the material universe to be simply illusion, should surrender unto me both that knowledge and the means by which he achieved it. So there it is. Hey, look, you can get really enlightened by studying and by mental prowess and mental ambition. But you're still going to get to a point where all of that leads up to me. And once you get to that point, chuck out the knowledge you got and chuck out the means by which you achieved it, because here I am, And at the end of the day, it's a relationship, not a pile of knowledge that we're after, even if knowledge serves in the process of enlightenment in some way. So let's read that one more time. I really like it. A self-realized person who has cultivated the scriptural knowledge up to the point of enlightenment and who is free from impersonal speculation, understanding the material universe to be simply illusion, should surrender unto me both that knowledge and the means by which he achieved it. Look, at the end of the day, you may know very well that this is an illusion, or that this, know the difference between spirit and matter, see the truth, be very well studied and very knowledgeable about spiritual life. But at the end of the day, all of that's going to take you to a person that wants a personal relationship, heart to heart kind of connection. So you're going to eventually chuck out the knowledge and the means by which you achieve the knowledge. Study. You can't study the playbook of love long enough to master it. At the end of the day, you just got to go and play the game of love with God, and like throw your heart into it, so to speak. Anyway, that's my creative take on it. But so that's what I've got for this one. I hope this was interesting. If you've got questions, please leave them. I'd love to hear your reflections. Info@nightlightastrology.com is the way to get a hold of me if you have any questions. And I hope you're having a great week. Hare Krishna.